Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm just keeping an eye. We've still got some people joining us, but we've got lots to cover, so I'm going to get started. First of all, huge welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and also hello to those of you who are watching us on playback. So we're nearing the end of week 4 out of 5 weeks of our online Impact Festival. And over these 5 weeks, we at the Centre for Homelessness Impact, along with our great partners, have created the space for you to meet, explore ideas, learn new skills, and to build a shared sense of what we can actually achieve in homelessness over these coming months and years. Now, the theme for this year's festival is accelerating impact. And it's a particularly pressing theme when we think about the recent progress that we've made. Now, our achievements in the last 4 to 5 months amidst an unprecedented global health crisis has actually shown us what can be achieved. And I know that we keep talking about that, but it's truly, truly amazing what we've been able to achieve in these past few months. But it's now up to us not to miss this opportunity, the golden opportunity that we have to transform the way we develop and the way that we deliver interventions to tackle homelessness. And I realise I've not introduced myself, sorry. I'm Faye Greaves, I'm Head of Policy, Practice and Development here at the Centre for Homelessness Impact. I'm really delighted to be chairing this session this afternoon because we're going to be launching our What Works Community Local Government Initiative. And before I tell you why that's so exciting, give you a bit more detail about that so that you understand why this is an important moment for us and hopefully for many of you who would hopefully benefit from this programme. It's just a few housekeeping bits and bobs. I'm not going to labour on these bits of information because I really want to get started and hear from our amazing speakers that we have with us today. So you have a chat box there at the bottom of your screen. I encourage you to use it, welcome yourself, introduce yourselves to each other, share your thoughts and comments throughout. There's a Q&A box there as well at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions at all, I'd urge you to use that function there to put questions through. I'll try and pick up as many as possible. So if there's anything burning that comes up throughout, please pop them in there and I'll pick those up later on. And we have a hashtag. If you are on social media, we'd really appreciate you taking your thoughts and extending the conversation to social media, and it's hashtag CHIFest2020. So as I said, today we're launching the What Works Community Local Government Initiative, and now this is why it's so exciting. Now we've got some amazing inspirational leaders from our pilot areas with us today, and I'll introduce you to those people very, very shortly. Around this time last year, we were actually building up to the launch of that pilot programme with our founding partners, because they are our founding partners. They're the pioneers of what we're going to be launching today. So leaders and teams of people from East Ayrshire Council in Scotland, Southend-on-Sea Borough Council in England, and Pembrokeshire County Council in Wales. We've got leaders with us today. As I said, they're going to talk to you a little bit more about their experience, what they learned along the way, how the experience has actually changed their approaches, and generally to reflect on the opportunity that we're extending to more people today. In terms of the initiative that we're launching today, everything we do at the Centre is about working towards a system that has evidence and data at its foundations, where we recognise the need to continuously build our understanding of what works when it comes to making sure that any experience of homelessness is only ever rare, brief and non-recurring. Now, it's this ethos that lies at the core of our What Works community. And through the community's founding partners at each of those 3 local authorities, we've piloted a core element of what's on offer via this programme that we're launching today. Now through the initiative, and what we plan to do is tailor that support to suit the needs and aspirations of people who are committed to building evidence and data into the way that they deliver their services, a real commitment to focusing on what works to bring transformational change in the way that you work. So we're scaling up our work today to work closely with 30 local authorities from across the UK over the coming year to provide the help and support that you need to achieve those breakthrough results in tackling homelessness. And we're doing it alongside our partners at Johns Hopkins University, the Behavioural Insights team and IDEO. And the idea is that we're providing expertise, capacity building and peer connections to give local authority leaders and their teams the tools and techniques needed to tackle their toughest homelessness challenges. Now, there's more information available on our website, and we'll make sure that the link is dropped in here to the chat box so that you can find out a little bit more about it and the process for expressing an interest. And what we'll be doing is we'll be going through those over the coming month. Obviously, there's a deadline in there. I don't have it quite. I think it's the 18th of September. And we're looking at starting a new cohort towards September. We're really excited to be working with you if you're one of those local authorities. So without further ado, I'm going to now introduce you to all of our, and then in turn, I'm going to ask each of them to come in and share their reflections and thoughts on the experience of being part of the pilot and their main learning points. So with us, we have Ali Griffin, who is the Chief Executive of Southend-on-Sea Borough Council. We have Councillor Ian Gilbert, leader at Southend-on-Sea Borough Council. We have Councillor Michelle Bateman, Cabinet Member for Housing at Pembrokeshire County Council. Fiona Leese, who is the Chief Executive at East Ayrshire Council, and Councillor Eleanor Witham, who is Deputy Leader of East Ayrshire Council and also Cabinet Member with the responsibility for housing and communities. So what I'm going to do now, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to remind you of the process of expressing an interest in joining us for the next iteration of our programme. But first of all, I'm going to hand over to Ali Griffin from Southend-on-Sea, who will talk us through her reflections on the experience. Ali.
Thank you, Faye. So as Faye has said, I'm Ali Griffin. I'm the Chief Executive at Southend-on-Sea Borough Council. And firstly, I just want to say thank you to Faye and the Centre for Homelessness Impact for inviting us to share our learning and thoughts today, but also for all of the support and input in the project so far. It really has exceeded all expectations, I'd say, and that's why I'd encourage all those local authority people out there that I hope are listening either now or in playback to really see if you can get involved in the next cohort. So why was it important for Southend-on-Sea to be part of the pilot and participate? Well, I think it goes back to our values, first of all. So through various connections, we came into contact with the Centre for Homeless Impact and the Watts Works communities, and the values just resonated. So our desire to really focus on outcomes, to think about how we collaborate with others and within the council, and I'll say a bit more about that later, to use various tools and techniques to ensure that we're delivering in a person-centred way, really focusing on what the citizen or resident needs, but also how they can participate and work with them moving forward is really important to us in Southend. And how we've articulated that, our councillors, you've got our leader, you'll hear from in a moment, in Southend, is through our ambition for Southend 2050, which really sets out how residents and businesses want to see the town in the future and how it will grow and how hopefully it will grow that keeps our distinctive places together. But we know to do that, we can't do it on our own as a council. That is at the heart of how we want to take things forward. And being a pilot and coming together with the Centre for Homelessness Impact really has helped to enhance that and demonstrate those values. So I would say what I'd encourage you to think about when thinking about the next cohort is exploring how you behave as an organisation and what do you want, and does this resonate for you? Because I think that's important to make it a success. So that's why I think we participated. And as I said, I think it really has exceeded all expectations, and I think it will continue to as we move forward. So the what question for us, and I think you'll find a common theme through this from the other pilots as well, is, you know, we all know that the private rented sector is a significant opportunity for us in relation to homelessness, but also can cause some concerns as well. So our particular question was about how we work with everyone involved to prevent evictions from the private sector, from the private sector homes. And that really is, isn't it, the $60 million question, really. And very interestingly, through COVID, we've seen sometimes how some national interventions could prevent that for a little while, but we know there's a bit of a cliff edge coming. So this question feels even more relevant now, I think, than when we started the pilot. So being able to come together on one of these key issues, sometimes what some people would term as a wicked issue, I think was really helpful, and beginning to almost unpeel that onion about really get under the skin of really what does cause some of the evictions, and all the different players in the system of understanding the role they currently play and maybe the roles they could play in the future. So in thinking then about our approach and working with the, with CHI, we were able to bring together the project team. And I think that as another opportunity of how this process works, because we were able to bring together colleagues from across the council who hadn't necessarily worked together before, but also partners from the community sector. And I think doing this project together has been one of their strengths, because actually that collaboration has enabled those relationships to develop in a really sound way that I don't think is possible sometimes in the day-to-day, just trying to get your task list done. And so that has been a great opportunity, and again, another reason why I'd encourage others to participate. And we've got some really good feedback from the participants. So that's enabled the approach in terms of how we brought it together in terms of that project team. But the opportunity of the pilot has been for them to learn and to gain the skills and some of the tools that we know we need in Southend anyway to make that difference and achieve those outcomes in Southend 2050. So how you use data and understanding data in an evidence way has been one of the elements in learning. I'm sure other speakers will talk about that. Human-centered design, so the support from IDEO, but also fits in with our own approach in Southend of service redesign and using design thinking as the groundswell for the foundation for that approach. So we're already using that in some other areas of the council, and then to be able to learn from this initiative and spread that more widely, have the stories from the participants, I think will put us in a stronger place, because you'll all know when you're trying to embed approaches in councils, you really do need people to be able to show and tell it, rather than just, it's no use me just telling everyone, oh, that's a good idea, let's do it. That's not how you get things done. Some people might think that's what happens when a chief exec says something, but it really isn't. It's much better when peer-to-peer have had these kinds of experiences and can share that with their colleagues across the council, which is going to be part of our next steps, which I'll talk about in a moment. So that's the, and then the behavioural insight, really helping our project team to understand and actually to remember that everyone is a human in this system, and what motivates, incentivizes, actually how you can change some of your approaches to get those better outcomes working with people, I think they found helpful as well. So in terms of the other benefit I would talk about, I've said about the collaboration and getting to know each other across the council and with our partners better. But one of the key things for that was also some of the residential approach in the way that things have gone. And that gives the different space, physical space, as well as headspace to develop and test some of the ideas and to really deep dive. And for our team, and Ian will be able to say more about this because he was there for one of them, actually it helped them to get out of their comfort zone at times, which can feel scary. But I think we need to do that, all of us, all of the time, if we're really going to address some of these really fundamental issues, like trying to prevent evictions from the private sector. So where do we go forward? So COVID came along, didn't it, and has disrupted a bit where we thought we'd be at this point. But we are all picking it up again, and we absolutely will complete the project before the new cohort starts. And I'm so pleased and enthused actually by what I've seen and what I've learned from the team, that I want them to come to our corporate management team to share their learning, not just the what bit, but really share what they've learned, and then continue to do that, not just in the council, but across our networks in Southend, because others can benefit from this learning too and learn about what works. So I think there's more benefits than just being able to change some of the housing system as a result of this work. And that's what's so important and valuable to councils at this really challenged time. I better shut up there.
Ali, thank you so much. A really great start. We are pushed for time, so I am just going to go straight into asking Councillor Gilbert, please, to take the virtual floor.
Thank you. I think Ali's covered really well Southend's experience of this project. I do think that it's been immensely helpful to bring back this learning within the organisation. Homelessness in general is a huge challenge for us as an authority, and to give colleagues a sense of scale. You know, during COVID, we've accommodated well in excess of 100 former rough sleepers, which for an authority of our size is an absolutely huge number. And I think that the learning and the thinking that was done in part of this course, in terms of being able, in terms of developing how we engage the private sector landlords, I think has really stood us in good stead for the work that we are having to do now, in terms of actually moving people on and trying to find people the permanent settled accommodation that we know we need to do. I think it is, as Ali said, a new way of working for many of our staff, and the knowledge and experience, I think will be extremely useful for us. Southend, we decided that we would adopt a collaborative approach and bring colleagues with us from the voluntary sector, partners who we work with in a formal way, but to actually give them the time to learn and to co-produce solutions with our own staff to actually solve these really big problems. I think has been it's been very useful, and I think it's the sort of thing we need to embed, as Ali said, right across the council to allow us to deal better with all the various challenges that we'll face in the future. Because we know that these problems aren't going away, and we know that local authorities are going to have to find new solutions to the new challenges. But yeah, the learning from this, I think, it's already showing benefit. in terms of being able to work with the private sector, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. I'll finish there because I think Ali really said just about everything that needed to be said from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Some really, really powerful reflections there from Southend-on-Sea. Some great points that I've picked out, which I'm going to pick up later when we go to have a wider discussion. But before we get there, in the meantime, I'm going to pass over to Councillor Bateman from Pembrokeshire, please.
Thank you. So it was at the end of January that we were together in Manchester, and it feels like a lifetime ago now because so much has changed in that really short space of time. Firstly, I want to say how proud I am of the Pembrokeshire team. I only took on the housing portfolio in September last year, and not long after that, I was told about the opportunity that we had to be involved in this pilot. And it was clear that the team were excited about the opportunity, and their enthusiasm and commitment to it has been key to us getting so much out of it. In the past, I think, as an authority, we have sometimes been quite inward looking, partly due to our geographical location, but we're increasingly looking to learn from others. It was a real benefit to work with East Ayrshire and Southend and have that opportunity to discuss shared experiences. There are many differences in governance and policy in England, Wales and Scotland, both on the local and national level. And while those differences might impact on what and how we do things, homelessness and housing as a whole are ultimately about people, and there were so many common themes and experiences that we could discuss together. Homelessness in Pembrokeshire looks very different to some other parts of the UK. We don't have a visible rough sleeper problem, but what we do have is a hidden homelessness problem. We have people staying with family and friends, sofa surfing and in temporary setups. Pembrokeshire is a close-knit community and our staff know their population really well, and they've always recognised that hidden need. These individuals often have the same high-level support needs of those who are in a more urban location would be on the streets, but the data we have doesn't support this. There's a big difference between knowing something because of your experience and local knowledge and being able to evidence that through data. This becomes really important when trying to raise the profile on a political level or when trying to redesign a service. After the first residential, it became really clear to the team that while we have lots of sets of data in housing, lots of it is collected to be sent to Welsh Government or for KPIs, but it's not of value to the team. A rough sleeper count, for example, isn't really an accurate reflection of the homelessness experienced in Pembrokeshire. It really made them think about the kind of data that's valuable to us and having data that will inform evidence-based decisions. The pilot came at a really good time for us in Pembrokeshire, as it was already a time of change, as well as the change in political lead that came with my appointment as the cabinet member. There has been a restructure which saw housing move under the Social Care Directorate led by Jonathan Griffiths. This was already showing benefits of a much closer working relationship between housing and social care staff. This made it easy to approach this pilot with a team built up from across the organisation and the third sector. Our organisation as a whole is also a place of change at the moment. We have a transformation programme and as part of that, a culture change. We also have a new data management strategy and a roadmap for becoming a data-driven council. Data is becoming an important part of our recovery process. Cabinet has been clear that we want to see evidence-based decisions as we look at delivering services in a different way. These changes have meant that staff were already open to new ways of working when we started on the pilot. The Housing Directorate was already in the process of purchasing a new IT system that's going to change how we work. It's a huge project that involves building maintenance, tenancy management, allocations, and because of our involvement in the pilot, it's now a key part in managing the kind of data that we have, and we're able to ask what data we really need to improve not just our homeless service, but our housing service as a whole. The way the pilot was designed had real benefits for us. It was hard work for them and it was intensive, but the information around data and behavioural insights was really valuable. It was a new approach to problem solving. I think in a busy local government setting, and I think Ali sort of touched on this earlier, it's it's so busy and staff have high workloads and increasingly less capacity. It's not always easy to bring people together from different sections, particularly for any length of time. It's a bit of a treadmill sometimes, and there isn't always an opportunity to be able to take a step back from a problem and look at it differently. The pilot saw us create a team from housing, youth services, social care and the third sector, which was of real value. I think they benefited from the residential being physically removed from their daily setting, gave them the chance to really focus everything on what they were trying to achieve. From the time I spent with them on the last residential in Manchester, I could see how much they developed as a team, and there was a real team approach building. Housing and homelessness is a huge area with many elements and problems. Breaking it down to one manageable task worked really well, so much that we've discussed using that method in other areas. Some of the team were due to give a presentation to the Transformation Board about their experience and how it could benefit us as a council. But due to the pandemic, that hasn't happened yet. But as we move further into recovery, I'm keen that we start that back up again. The pandemic has had a huge impact on our homeless service. Many of those people who I mentioned earlier, who were our hidden homeless population, suddenly found those casual setups that they had were no longer viable, and we experienced a huge increase in demand for our services. This hasn't been without its challenges, but our staff have been fantastic. Welsh Government have made a clear commitment to ending homelessness, and we've been able to put in a bid for some funding under their phase 2 response. Our plans and how we've built those plans have been very much influenced by our involvement in the pilot. Our bid has a focus on evidence and trialling support services so that we can evidence what works and to see what we want to do in the future. We've a focus on prevention and learning from our service users. Our focus during the pilot was the breakdown of tenancies, particularly within the private sector, and this has fed into our bid and our long-term plans for addressing and preventing homelessness. The private sector offers a huge opportunity for us, but previously we've seen a breakdown in tenancies and sometimes a reluctance to work with local authorities. It's a really exciting time for us in Pembrokeshire as we redesign our service, and there's a desire from the staff and me as the political lead to be ambitious and to try some new things, but to learn as we go. When I took on the role as councillor 3 years ago, I was completely new to it, but I took on the approach of being able to learn as much as I could. I took on every opportunity, joined every working group, sat in on every seminar that I could to learn as much as I could from everyone. And I would say to any local authorities that are thinking about becoming part of that pilot is to really take on that approach. There's so much to be learned from the ways of working, the way that the Centre for Homelessness Impact approach looking at problems, but also just from those conversations with other authorities, because there might be differences between how you approach things, the services that you have, but ultimately you'll find that you've got far more in common and you've got far more stories and experiences that connect you and that you'll be able to learn from. So go for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bateman. Another inspirational and powerful account of your experience. So I'm going to now hand over to Councillor Witham, please, of East Ayrshire.
Thanks very much, Faye, and thank you for having us, myself and Fiona, today. I think the opportunity to take part in the session is very welcome. And we're absolutely delighted to be working with the Centre for Homelessness Impact to deliver positive change for the people in our communities in East Ayrshire who are at risk of experiencing homelessness. So I'd like to say a few words about our efforts to improve our housing and tackle homelessness locally, including why we decided to take part in this pilot. And then I'll hand over to our Chief Executive, Fiona Lees, so she can say a little bit more about the pilot itself. For us, everyone in East Ayrshire should be able to access a quality home that meets their needs and their aspirations, and which is located in a safe and attractive neighbourhood, in which they're proud to live in. And this is clearly reflected to us in our community's own regeneration plans, which is a sovereign document that many of our communities have created themselves. And this also is reflected in our overarching community plan that we have with all of our community planning partners. And in recent years, we've invested heavily in new build stock of housing, improvements to our existing stock. We've built over 1,100 new homes in our town centres. That was one of the decisions that we took to prioritise town centre living, often in brownfield and derelict sites, so to help regenerate our places. We've delivered a range of accommodation. Now that's really important, making sure that we've got houses specifically designed for older people, wheelchair users and adults with complex needs. So this is where your data starts to come in to play. You really need to interrogate your waiting lists. You really need to look at your housing demands and needs assessments. Also to, how do we use the place standard tool to actually help us to create communities that are fit for purpose, that have long-term sustainability. We've also been really working closely with our empty homes owners, and this was one of our key areas that we decided to look at. We had a lot of empty homes across the authority, and this brings all sorts of different issues, as the fellow councillors on the call will understand. And in the last 4 years, we've managed to bring the number of empty homes down from 1,100 to just over 300, which is a significant change. We've also got an increasing private rented sector, which is really good. And this was raised by over 1,500 properties in the last year. And we know that this is a key area where we needed to look at how do we actually harness the opportunities, as others have said, in the private rented sector. And this is a problem that we've got because people have a belief that it's unaffordable. And in our local authority area, we have actually the lowest rents in the private rented sector in Scotland. So we knew that there's a huge opportunity there. And like other authorities, East Ayrshire has areas of really high demand and areas of lower demand. So we're actually having to contract some of our communities. And this also gave us an opportunity to try and figure out how do we engage with the private rented sector for those areas of high demand where we're not going to be able to provide socially rented stock. So those are the kind of things that we were thinking as we were starting the pilot. So we all know that homelessness is not just a housing problem. It's poverty, it's inequality, it's well-being, it's employment, it's relationships. And we know that we've got an issue in East Ayrshire with repeat homelessness. So why are those tendencies breaking down? Why are we having the same cohort of individuals repeating that cycle over and over and over again? So those are the things that we were wanting to look at. In 2007, I was invited to co-chair the National Homeless Prevention and Strategy Group in Scotland with the Housing Minister, as I have the role of spokesperson in the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities for the Community Wellbeing section with a focus on housing. And we actually focused on the recommendations from the HARSAG group. So that was the National Homelessness Prevention and Strategy Group. And there's lots of recommendations that came out from that. And that's to find the short and longer term solutions to end homelessness and rough sleeping and transform the use of temporary accommodation. And a key recommendation from the group was for local authorities in Scotland to transition to a housing first and rapid rehousing approach and develop a 5-year plan. So our teams have been, had been working really hard on that to ensure that progress could be made as quick as possible. So we signed off on that plan in May 2019 and set out locally in our vision for eradicating homelessness through early intervention and prevention. Now we've heard that from others. The key is that early intervention and prevention. And we wanted to take a housing-led approach to ensure that people reach a settled housing option as quickly as possible, minimising any time that we have in temporary accommodation. But it didn't just end with, start and end with homelessness. We actually then took a wider transformation look at housing. So instead of our housing officers being housing officers, they're now community coaches. And they're actually embedding a coaching approach to actually get in with households at the earliest opportunity. And shift that relationship, which is so important. So we need to also focus on those with the complex needs. Unfortunately, we have quite a lot of drugs-related deaths in East Ayrshire recently, and we actually really have to get behind, how do we work with the partners in the alcohol and drug partnerships and with our health and social care partners, because it's more than just housing. It goes right across our different areas. So that's a hugely important thing. This council has always been enthusiastic about pioneering new ways of working, particularly those that can benefit our communities. So when the opportunity presented itself to take part in this pilot, we jumped at the chance. Now I had met Lesia, your director or CEO, I don't know what her title is, at several national events, and I was absolutely blown away by just how enthusiastic and innovative that she was. And I knew that this was actually going to give our officers a fantastic opportunity, and as others said, to take them out of their day-to-day work and actually go to be able to come together and share that experience is so important, because evidence and the use of data is really important here, because it's only by experimenting, it's only about evaluation of that data that we're going to actually translate the ideas into solutions and understand what works. And if it works, but it's not part of what we've normally done, don't stop doing it. Make that, embed that, and use that as being the change. Because we really need to try and reduce the demand on professional services and actually develop a resilience within communities and households for for them to be able to come up with their own solutions. And sometimes that's about letting go of power, and we don't always like to let go of power, whether that's the officers or elected members. But that's really important. And I think for myself right now, I have a huge national body of work that's going on in terms of the coronavirus and the recovery and renewal from that for the housing sector right across Scotland. And one of the things that's coming out of that clearly is that we need to rework the rapid rehousing transition plans, which they've started, have been done, and that's to reflect, the changed landscape. And I think we need to make sure that we use the opportunities that we have just now to be even more innovative than previously, what we have done. And the thing about that is the private rented sector is going to be key, because we've recognised that councils themselves cannot do this alone coming out of this COVID crisis, that we need maximal housing options for everybody that's in need of a house. And I am worried about that cliff edge that I think Ali mentioned, because we do know that the increase in the local housing allowances and the increase across universal credit at the moment is helping. And I do have a concern about that going forward. Equally, we need to try and make sure that we maximise those options out there for everybody that's facing homelessness coming in the wake of this pandemic. And I think that we're all understanding that we are gearing up for an increase in those presentations in the next few months. So I'll hand over to our Chief Exec, who's going to speak a little bit more about the pilot. Thanks.
Yes, last but by no means least, sorry, I thought that was a nice little handover there and I didn't need to do my job, but I clearly still need to do my job. Fiona Lease, please.
Well, thank you very much, Faye, and like Councillor Whittam, it's absolutely great to be with you today. Partnership's one of our council's core values. We recognise, that as councils, as the only democratically elected local body, then we are in a position to bring people to the table who can work with and for our communities. And East Ayrshire is a council that takes its community leadership role extremely seriously. But this pilot gave us the opportunity to reach beyond our normal reach and to work with the centre and colleague councils, Southend and Sea and Pembrokeshire, in the other nations. Our teams really appreciated and embraced the opportunity to be involved in this data-led and evidence-based research project and to work with specialists like Johns Hopkins University, IDEA and Behavioural Insights. So at the start of the pilot, our team was given the challenge of designing a solution that was intended to increase the number and duration of tenancies for people in the private sector who were either at risk or who were experiencing homelessness. And you've heard Councillor Whittam already. This is an area in which we were really engaged. Since 2010, we have increased by over 50% the number of private rented properties in our area. We're just over 5,000. And we've also at the same time brought down the number of empty homes as well. So from those two teams, we brought together quite a diverse team right across the council that played to our strengths and our partnership work with other agencies and with our third sector. And we worked really closely with letting agencies and most importantly, those who are involved in delivering that service and in accessing accommodation from the private rented sector. So, like Ali earlier on, we recognised that in many cases we were very much in reactive mode, responding to failed tenancies at a crisis point where we hadn't been cited or we hadn't been involved before. So one of the things we wanted to do was to develop something at low cost that was scalable, which would allow us to address landlord and tenant potential conflict. And we wanted that to be essentially a web-based solution that was intended to have a far reach, that it would set out information, clearly roles and responsibilities, important help and matter around about universal credit and managing a home, access to community support, which is vital because all of these homes sit in neighbourhoods and neighbourhoods can support one another, and ultimately support to conflict resolution as well. And with our landlords forum, because that's something as well, we have developed our private landlords forum, and the work we've been doing with those who have empty homes, then they have guided our actions. Now, like everyone else, COVID has come along and COVID has interrupted and it has disrupted that. But I'm able to say, our planned design sessions with the centre are underway, and this hasn't had an impact on either our communications or on our planning. But what it has done is, like everything else, it's given us the opportunity to assess what's of value to our community. And it's given us a pace and an urgency round about our actions. So important changes have been made that we now want to capture and keep, and things that haven't worked for us, we want to lose and we want to leave behind. So maybe a couple of things, just to share with you. At the onset of the pandemic, then we moved all of our people out of our hostel. We moved them into temporary furnished accommodation, and we did that for two reasons. One, to keep them safe and to try and give them as much support as we could, and to bring increased stability to their lives. But we also thought we would need the hostel and we'd need to re-provision it as a health facility and a step-down facility to the District General Hospital, which thankfully hasn't been necessary. We also, during COVID, I suspect, like colleagues in Southend-on-Sea and Pembrokeshire, we've really supercharged our work on digital, our presence online and how accessible our services are online. And that has been mirrored by our work in the community to increase digital participation. So we see the work we are doing now providing an ideal home, and actually a much more positive platform than possibly was there previously for the work that we'll be advancing through the pilot. Now, learning and collaborating is absolutely key to our work. In fact, we often say every day is a school day, and the lessons that we've learned from Pembrokeshire and Southend-on-Sea have been invaluable. And for us, key points, and I'm going to repeat what others have said, but they bear repetition. It is about analysing data and being perfectly clear in what it's telling you, and importantly, where there are gaps, and never making those assumptions. Lived experience is vital, and without it, we are nothing. And because of that lived experience, that design has to sit at the centre of very person-based approaches. So that guides, the most basic of our interactions round about early engagement and arrangements for interview. Now more than ever, we need to prioritise our resources. We need to get the best out of what we've got. We need to work with partners, and that's what collaboration is all about. And like I think it was Councillor Gilbert earlier on, then the learning from this pilot, like everything else, is transferable, and will apply to other areas of our council where we're very keen to take it. So we value and benefit from, and you'll have appreciated that from Councillor Whittam's presentation, very close working with elected members here in East Ayrshire. As we take forward the vision we share for our communities, and we work on the key issues that are important to our communities. And I think the other thing we have benefit from, and this pilot is another example of that, is our health and social care partnership being absolutely embedded within the council. and being fundamental to our approach, particularly around about early intervention and prevention. I mean, that's what allows us to stop bad things happening. So, you know, we're on track for our presentations in September, and as I say that, that's only next month. But you know, we look forward to welcoming the team to the Council's management team, to our cabinet, and I think we'll also be taking the opportunity to extend our reach and to be sharing our learning with other colleagues here in Scotland. And you know, if any of them are listening just now, then our clear message is this is something that is absolutely worth doing. So this pilot for us has been innovative, it's been ambitious, which is what we are all about, and this is helping us achieve our vision for you know, the eradication of homelessness here in East Ayrshire, and will absolutely sit at the heart of our plans as we recover and renew from COVID. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and to all of our leaders for sharing their experiences and insights into the experience. Really encouraging feedback, and hopefully others are inspired by what you have to say. So we have a few questions coming in. I think it would be really good to just kick off, I think, with a question around the role of leadership, because obviously the idea of leaders supporting this approach at a local authority level, there may be leaders out there that may kind of question the value of taking this kind of approach. I mean, each of you talked about potentially 2 layers to what you've learned from the programme around the way that you view your wider services and applying the learning to different areas of the way that you deliver services. But then the other part of it is around specific interventions. The crux of this project for each of you is around the private rented sector. So it was about potentially testing tweaks to different interventions to improve outcomes in the private rented sector to reduce homelessness. What would you say to other local authority leaders, or even to officers who are in a local authority who are really up for taking a test and learn approach and really shaking up the way that they do things, with a view to making lasting change? What would you say would be your top tip for either officers or leaders who are a bit skeptical and need just that little bit of a nugget of, okay, well, this is the reason why, in maybe 2 sentences? I'm going to go to Ali first, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Faye. So it's a bit of an old adage, isn't it? So my top tip to the skeptical leaders would be, we keep doing the same things but expecting a different answer. Really? So now more than ever, for the very reason that we've said about the cliff edge and everything, our existing ways and traditional ways of doing things isn't going to cut it. And that's really hard, because that's how people have been trained. That's how our teams have been trained. That's how actually our citizens expect us to behave as well. So you are challenging a number of assumptions by working in this way. But I think it's worth the risk. And not all of it, that's why it's test and learn, not all of it will work. And there are ethical considerations and other things really, you know, and I know the team have grappled with some of that, and that's good. We need to be open about those things too. So for the skeptical out there, we're not going to achieve what we need to achieve in local government, or indeed with our communities, unless we try some different things. And this is a way to really bring some expertise into learning about how to do things differently in a way that in local government we just normally aren't able to do. So that's what I'd say to a skeptical leader out there.
Thank you. If I was a skeptical leader, I'd definitely be on board. Thank you very much, Ali. Next, Councillor Bateman, please.
Well, I'm not sure how I can top that from Ali, but But I would say that thing about comfort zones being great places, but nothing ever grows there. I think sometimes you have to step out of how you do things day to day and really shake it up. And then when you do that, you see things in a different way. You know, when you have teams that are mixed, you know, we've had our team was made up from across the authority and with the third sector, and with that you get a real change in dynamic. I think sometimes in local authorities you can be siloed and you can do the same things in the same way with the same views, and you just need to shake it up and just go for it. Definitely.
Shake it up, go for it. I like it. Councillor Whitham, please.
Thanks very much, Faye. How do you follow both of those fantastic contributions? I think the thing about it is we can't be scared to fail, all right? Because what we've always been doing has not worked. And we have to decide that we're going to do something different. I've been homeless twice in my life. I have worked in homelessness services for a very long time, in both the statutory and the voluntary sector. And, you know, when I became an elected member, I was still seeing the same problems that I worked with, and a lot of the things that we were doing in the middle of amazing transformation work, you know, all this transformational work that was happening. And sometimes it is about getting out of those silos. So, you know, East Ayrshire has been doing that for a long time, but still, I think sometimes housing can apply really rigid rules, right? And a lot of the time, the rigid rules might come from statutory guidance and you know, legislation that's there. But sometimes the rules of our, you know, are that we've made. They're our own making. And so I think sometimes we have to not be scared to undo these rules, you know, to change. And I think that this pilot gives you the opportunity to do that. So I would take it with both hands if I was out there as an authority that's maybe a little bit skeptical about it, because as Ali has said, we are facing huge problems coming down the line in terms of homelessness. We don't know when the furlough scheme ends. Are people going to become more redundant? We're seeing it every day. There's all these issues that are coming like a train right at us. And so we have to seek to do something completely different. So I would say don't be skeptical and don't be scared. Just do it. Thanks.
Fabulous. Because we're coming up towards the end of time, and we do have other questions coming through. I think I'm going to spread the next question out amongst those we've not heard from yet. So there were three elements, you know, apart from the fact that you had lots of people coming together, the peer support that you all talked about, that you said that was really, really important about local authorities, despite coming from potentially different contexts, all dealing with some of the same issues, but also learning from each other despite those differences in context. And then the data side of it. I'd just like to take this opportunity to just ask you a little bit more about where you are now with your understanding of your data infrastructure, and if you would compare it with where you were before. Lots of people talk about, we've got lots of data, we just don't know what's useful, we don't know what to do with it. Have we got the right data? Where are the gaps? So there was definitely a big element of that in this program. Could you just talk me through some of the kind of reflections on where you are now in terms of understanding where you are with data, whether you still have work to do compared with where you were before? Councillor Gilbert, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that we still have work to do in assembling and understanding the data that we have, but I think it has encouraged us to look beyond. A colleague made reference to the fact that rough sleeper counts, for example, you know, only show a very small part of the story. And that we need to look at, you know, I think what it is, it's about combining data with lived experience, and it's got to be seen. You can't lose sight of either side of the coin. You need data to inform decisions, but you also need to keep on top, you know, keep your focus on the human element that's behind the data. I think, you know, during the course, I think our team gained a much greater understanding of how you can bring together statistics with the soft information about what's actually behind them. And again, I think that's a really useful bit of learning and experience that I think but there's definitely still work to do to embed that more widely.
Thank you very much. It is an ongoing process. I think if we think that we've got our data sorted, then we definitely have got more work to do. That's great. Thank you very much. Fiona, please.
Thanks very much. Well, we understand our data a lot better. We understand, why people become homeless and the reasons for that. But we also know that every number is a person and every person is a story. So people's experiences are hugely important, and that lived experience has been integral to the work of our teams. And so has work that we have undertaken in response to COVID, where we have rapidly redesigned our protection services in terms of child and adult protection, in terms of addiction services, and the new vulnerabilities that COVID itself has brought, because COVID has revealed for us a lot of people who were previously not seen or who are vulnerable because of COVID. So what that has allowed us to do is bring that together, and across the council then there is also the intelligence that comes from those who know about our property estate and our households, and there's that really important matching exercise that takes place there. So it genuinely has been an all council effort that is given us a much bigger understanding of need and also where opportunity lies as well. And sitting alongside that too is the intelligence we have from our communities, because community networks and community support are key to people having strong and sustainable and successful lives, and they are part of that whole East Ayrshire effort.
Fabulous, thank you very much, Fiona. Councillor Bateman, if you can give the perspective for Pembrokeshire, please.
Thank you. I think it's clear that we didn't have enough data before, and that we weren't really using data to its full effectiveness, and that has changed. I think now when we look at making decisions, we're first going, well, where's the evidence that supports this? Where's the data that tells us this is the right thing to do? And we're also looking at what data can we take from this experience, whether that is qualitative data in the conversations that we have with some of our service users, or whether it's that more hard data. But we're using the word now data all the time. It comes up in conversations, and I think that's a huge change in itself. The pandemic has had a huge impact on us, but in some ways, and I think, if you can ever take a benefit from something as enormous as this, all of those people that before that we didn't reach, we are now having contact with, and that's got to be a benefit. These people were always there, but we never had contact with them. And now, because circumstances have changed, we are in a position where we are now able to support them. So that's been a real benefit to us. And then we hopefully can continue those relationships into the future and build on them, and maybe have conversations with people about why we hadn't been able to engage with them previously, what was stopping them accessing services through the council, and then we can use that data then to further reach people that might still be out there who we haven't been able to reach in the past. So I think that's going to be key for us in planning our future services.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. We are fast nearing the end of the hour. Such a fascinating opportunity to hear from each of you. I can say completely and utterly that it's been an absolute pleasure working with each of you and your teams. So much passion, eagerness to learn, and actually embrace the ambiguity when they're asked to do things that really push their boundaries. And then they've delivered, because they've all come together and recognised, inspired by your leadership, that this is a really important thing to do. Thank you so much for your time. Fiona, Councillor Whittam, Ali, Councillor Gilbert, Councillor Bateman, thank you so much. It's been great to hear from you. To everybody who's joined us, hopefully that's been a bit of insight into what the opportunity is that we're offering through the What Works Community Local Government Initiative that we've launched today. If you're available at 2 o'clock today, we have a masterclass where we get an opportunity to hear from each of the people from the teams, the people that have been taking part and doing the kind of hands-on learning, and find out directly from them what you could potentially expect if you were to go through this exact experience. As I said, there's more information about the launch and what it is we're offering on our website. If you have any questions whatsoever, please get in touch with us. We're here to support you. And we just look forward to working with those 30 local authorities and taking this forward. Thank you very much, everybody, and take care.